Once again, we are here looking at the things that happened in 1972 that are directly affected by 2020. And this time, we're going to be talking about the women that have been affected from the 1972 effect and the 2020 effect.
I am broadcasting on all AM frequencies. I will be at the South Street Seaport every day at midday when the sun is highest in the sky. If you are out there, if anyone is out there, I can provide food, I can provide shelter, I can provide security. If there's anybody out there, anybody, please, you are not alone.
Okay, first off, I would like to say that I should not be speaking about this because I'm not a woman. So I would rather have seen a woman actually talking about this topic, about the 1972 effect in the 2020. But since there is nobody else and I'm the only one who's doing these videos about this effect, about what's going on. So there is no woman to actually do it right now. But I would have enjoyed listening to and watching a woman's video that would have been talking about this effect. So not saying there's not somebody out there who can't do it. Anyhow, also you're going to be noticing that at the bottom of the screen you're going to be seeing The Season of the Witch. That movie came out in 1972. It really has nothing to do with pretty much all this stuff that I'm talking about between 72 and 2020. It's just funny that the reason why I put that up there is because usually whenever a woman chooses either side of any position on anything, whether it be religion, race, politics, anything, she's always demonized from the other side as being like a witch. So even like, for example, let's say the Amy Colbert thing that's going on with her. Well, on her side, she looks like a righteous, good person, but on the other side, the other women are looking at her as a suppressor and demonizing her as a witch. You know what I mean? If you look at Kamala Harris, on her side of the aisle, there are people who are praising her and saying she's brave, she's strong, she's strong, brave black woman who is going to be running for vice president. But on the other side of the aisle, they will consider her a witch. So it doesn't matter which position that a woman, and I don't mean as far as like literally as a witch, I mean demonized as a female as a whole. And usually the strongest demonization of a female is usually a witch. So that's the whole reason for The Season of the Witch. And it's funny that the movie came out in 1972, Season of the Witch. So that's the reason why I put that in there, and that hopefully that clears some things up so you guys understand why that's there. So let's start off with understanding what happened in 1972 with the women, talking about the ERA.
According to Wikipedia, the Equal Rights Amendment, ERA, is a proposed amendment to the United States Constitution designed to guarantee equal legal rights for all American citizens regardless of sex. On March 22, 1972, the ERA was placed before the state legislatures with a 7-year deadline to acquire ratification by 3/4 of the state legislatures.
Is the Equal Rights Amendment actually about helping women? The answer is no. Let me explain. Following the constitutional amendment process, the amendment went to state legislatures for ratification. In response, conservative women led the charge against the amendment, claiming it would not in fact help women, but it would harm them. Pro-family activist Phyllis Schlafly and others argued that the ERA would 1. Lead to women being drafted into the military, 2. Eliminate sex crime laws that rely on gender, 3. Alter laws which require men to pay alimony and child support, 4. Eliminate Social Security benefits for widows and homemakers, and 5. Force taxpayer-funded abortions upon all Americans. But now it's 2019, and the ERA is once again being pushed by activists. But this time, the movement to ratify the ERA in state legislatures across the country is not coming from those who want to give women equal rights, but from the abortion lobby. This is despite the fact that Alice Paul, the original author of the ERA, publicly called abortion the ultimate form of exploitation. So why is the abortion lobby obsessed with ratifying the ERA now in 2019? Because they are terrified that Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Bolton, the two 1973 Supreme Court decisions which made abortion legal in all 9 months of pregnancy, will soon be reversed. Out-of-touch activists now believe the ERA could help them worm abortion into the Constitution. So in reality, the ERA should be called the Everything Related to Abortion Act. Let me be clear, the ERA isn't necessary. There are plenty of laws that ensure equal pay and equal protection for both sexes. You get the point. So the next time you hear activists pushing for new laws ensuring equality for women, ask them why the current ones aren't enough. You'll get your answer. The ERA isn't about women's equality. It's about pushing the agenda of the abortion lobby.
So if you look at what was going on with the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment, that was passed in 1972, that was a major, major thing. In fact, 1972 was a major year for women. During the time when women were fighting for their rights, were fighting for that Equal Rights Amendment to go on, even in like media and like everything, the country was a man's world. It literally was men who were pretty much predominantly everywhere and running everything. In 2020, it's completely the opposite. Right now, there are more women in America. There are more women voters. There's more women in the workplace than men.
Okay, according to new data from the Labor Department, women are overtaking men on American payrolls. Last month, women held just over 50% of jobs, surpassing men by 109,000.
Experts say the development likely reflects the future of the American workplace. So the last time we saw this, industries that hired men most predominantly were like construction and manufacturing and mining. They were seeing disproportionate shedding of jobs that happened in the aftermath of the recession. Now we're seeing something slightly similar because of the trade war. Industries like manufacturing and mining are seeing a little bit of a downturn, so they're hiring less people. So the reason that women have overtaken men this time is because hiring in industries like education and healthcare and retail, those are industries that are predominantly women, and those industries are seeing more success than the manufacturing side of our economy. And this is a really good thing because this is the future of the workforce. We are increasingly becoming a services-oriented economy. 2/3 of our economy comes from the services side versus 1/3 that comes from manufacturing.
It seems all the single ladies are locking up the real estate market.
The National Association of Realtors indicates that 17% of women who are single or unmarried own homes, and it's only 7% for unmarried and single males.
Yeah, in fact, single and unmarried women have been outpacing single and unmarried men in homeownership since 1981, and there's no end to this trend in sight.
When I heard that was the statistic or the reality, I was actually a little shocked. But now that I think about it in my life, I have at least 3 other single women that are my age that own houses, and I can't think of a single male friend that owns a house on their own.
Trend right now, divorces are being initiated by women. A new study of more than 2,200 couples found women were the ones who initiate the divorce 69% of the time. That's compared to just 31% of divorces initiated by men.
Women are the majority of Americans. That's right. There's more of us than there are men. We also make up the majority of voters. But what does that really mean? And how can women use that to move an agenda forward?
Excited to talk about voting and women voting especially. What's new about this is that we are building a movement of women of all ages, races, and from all backgrounds together, so that because we know that together we are incredibly powerful. What's new about that is movements of the past have tended to leave women of color out, and this has tended to separate us. And what we know is that we're only a supermajority when all of us actually come together and work toward our own interest, our own interest, our own interest, our own interest.
The trend is the women are going to keep rising, as of 2020, the women has pretty much taken the reins of America. And as time goes on, if we were to make it past 2020, if we were to continue past the simulation, it definitely shows that the steady rise of women and a steady decline of men in this country is an inevitable thing, that it's going to happen. And even in the media, like when you flip on the news, you predominantly see 2 women versus 1 man as newscasters. It used to not be that way. It used to be more men than it was women. Now, before any woman gets upset and gets angry and thinks that I'm trying to making women look like they're witches or whatever, that's just not the truth. Literally, I hold no position on this, and if you really watch my other videos, you would really understand why I don't hold a position on this, because it is an inevitable thing that is written. So it doesn't matter whether I would have a stance against it or for it. It does not matter. That's the reason why I'd like a woman who to bring this up. I'm literally only presenting to you the facts. So there are more women in heroic films now. Like, they're replacing the men in heroic films. Even like the biggest franchise movies, action film that has ever been created was the Avengers. And when Avengers started off, they always had women who were heroes. In fact, the most strongest, one of the most heroes in the Avengers movie, in the first one, was a woman who had no powers. But she was part of this group and not so much as in front of the group. In other words, she wasn't the main, like, they didn't use her as a staple point of this is what drives this group. However, we all kind of felt like without her, there would be a big hole in this group of Avengers. And as the movies went on to Avengers 2, we saw another female hero added into the mix, and further and further and further throughout the whole MCU, we saw more and more and more female heroes, which was great. That was a beautiful thing. We all enjoyed that, although the whole thing where they had to slip in, Brie Larson at the end there, which she got hate on both sides because she totally came out and demonized men. Now they want to, what they're trying to do is they're trying to replace all male roles with all female roles as the heroes. With the media, with movies and entertainment, they definitely hold the power there, whereas they didn't before in the past. And I'm not speaking out negative towards it, because I'm looking forward to seeing some of the women in these movies and stuff and see how they do. But it's the fact of the culture and what is happening. In 1972, when women were fighting for the Equal Rights Amendment, that meant equal. Well, now in 2020, they don't have to worry about fighting for Equal Men's Amendment. It should be the men who should be fighting for equal rights amendment for them as well, because now it's completely overturned. It's a completely different, it's gone really far over the edge of equality, and now it's leaning towards one gender over the other.
Is she with you?
I thought she was with you.
Like, when I say that the women have definitely taken over a lot in America, and I don't mean that in a way, and gosh, I have to constantly backtrack on what I say, because it's always going to be skewed as, oh, you're just hating on women. That's absolutely not true. I was raised by a single mother around nothing but women. So, and there's something else now you guys are learning about me. When you go into grocery stores, and almost all stores, all automated things, all are women's voices. Like, you always hear a woman's voice.
Okay, here we go. Let's see if this thing talks.
Insert cash or select payment type. Use PIN pad to complete transaction. Thank you for shopping at Walmart.
Your Giant Eagle Advantage card has been accepted. Scan coupon now. Insert coupon into slot near the blinking light. Touch the continue button if finished. Would you like to make a donation? Your total is $1.39. Please select your payment method. Please insert coins, then insert bills. Please wait. System processing. Thank you for shopping at Giant Eagle. Please remember to take your change and your receipt. Please remove all bagged items.
Alright, here we go, Target.
Remember to grab your receipt. Thanks. See you again soon.
Please remember to take your receipt and all of your change. Thank you for shopping at CVS. Please remove all bagged items.
When you call on the phone, a lot of times when you hear, a automated voice, it's usually a woman. With Siri, with Alexa, with Google search.
Hey Cortana, where do you come from?
Right now, I live in the cloud.
Who made you?
While I can't give details, let me assure you, humans are involved.
Who's your daddy?
Technically speaking, that'd be Bill Gates. No big deal.
All of these things are always women. It's constantly a woman's voice, which is actually telling you what to do. To get your change, don't forget your receipt. Make sure you scan this. Hold please, we'll be right with you. Make sure you have your card. You know, it's constantly, even with the robotics, with the AI, they're constantly using women as the authority voice. So it's kind of like, so in 1972, none of this was going, this 1972, it was completely the opposite. The men were definitely, there was still a lot of suppression towards women in 1972, and that's the reason why women were fighting so hard to get out from beneath the suppression of such dominant men. So there was no equality. At some point in time in between 1972 and 2020, in between of those years, there probably was some equality between the sexes at one time, but now in 2020, the women's vote is going to determine who's going to be the next president.
Women voters decide elections. When you look at the women voters and you look at the presidential campaigns and which women the campaigns are targeting, the fact that they really understand that women voters decide elections. And I think suburban women in particular are going to be the ones to look at, because those are going to be the swing voters. And whether they vote for the Republican candidate or they vote for the Democratic candidate, I think is going to decide this election.
In 1972 was the very first black woman who ran for president, and that was Shirley Chisholm, which sounds like schism. And we're going to go to that real quick.
Here's the definition of schism. A split or division between strongly opposed sections or parties, caused by differences in opinion or belief.
I mean, it's the fact that her name is Chisholm and it sounds like schism. This is the way a computer works. This is the way an AI, a program will work. It will always have connections. There will always be things that connect together, because that's how a system works. So in 1972, she was the first black woman to run for president.
Chisholm shot back at critics who wanted her to support different bills she felt would hurt her district. During one battle, she publicly defended her position, saying,
"I'm unbought and unbossed."
This statement became a popular slogan others copied and described how she would conduct her political career and business. She meant she was not going to be controlled.
"Unbought and unbossed"
is the title of a book she published. In her typical style, Chisholm said,
"Of my two handicaps, being female put many more obstacles in my path than being black. Racism is so universal in this country, so widespread and deep-seated, that it is invisible because it is so normal."
Some contend that her courage to express her views about what she said was a systematic discrimination against blacks caused her political trouble. In 1972, Chisholm was again the focus of national attention after announcing her candidacy for President of the United States. This announcement made her the first black woman to run for the presidency.
I stand before you today as a candidate for the Democratic nomination for the presidency of the United States of America.
And then she was asked during her run if she did not make it as the Democratic nominee, would she consider being the very first female vice president candidate, and she would also be a black female vice president candidate. And she was asked if she would run with either Hubert Humphrey or Senator or George McGovern.
I'm not supporting any one man just on the basis of supporting a man. I'm sick and tired of promises and rhetoric, and a lot of people are in this country. I think it's important to see what the team would be like. I would be very much interested in seeing who would be with Mr. Humphrey and who will be with Mr. McGovern in terms of the team. The vice presidency in this country is becoming very, very important, and we just can't depend on thinking in terms of the top person on the ticket without giving some consideration to the second person on the ticket a little bit.
Let me broaden that question, Mrs. Chisholm. Forget the personality. If your own candidacy for the top spot should fail, would you actively seek to be on the ticket? Are you now saying that you think you could serve as Vice President of the United States, strengthening the ticket?
I could serve as President of this country, believe it or not.
Well, I phrased my question badly.
That's what you're a candidate
Let me go back
That's
and try
why I'm running.
Let me go back and try it again. Would
Yes,
you like to be on the ticket, whether it's the first or second spot, if you failed in the first spot?
However, McGovern actually got in there, and he did not ask Shirley Chisholm to be his VP nominee. He chose somebody else. That guy decided that he was too ill to actually continue forward to run as VP for McGovern. So then McGovern asked other Democratic nominees, and they all turned him down. He never went back and asked Shirley Chisholm once. He finally got somebody to agree, and he lost in a historic landslide that has never happened ever before in politics, where Richard Nixon won almost every single state. If Hubert Humphrey, who is very much Joe Biden, they have, if you watch my video, the 1972 and 2020 predicting the outcome, you'd understand a lot of this. Hubert Humphrey was a lot like Joe Biden. And Shirley Chisholm, who also was an attorney at one time, not a prosecutor, but an attorney like Kamala Harris.
I was going to raise the subject of busing. I'd like to hear how you feel on that.
Yes, certainly. I think that's, unfortunately, that issue has been used by one candidate in a very dramatic way in order to be able to get people to go to the polls to vote for or against busing, and not looking at the other candidates that ran in certain states, because that was the issue. It's a life or death matter. Busing is one of the artificial instruments that the Supreme Court has said must be utilized for quality integrated education in this country. If we had open housing in this country and the neighborhoods would have been reflective of the children, we wouldn't have had to talk about busing. But busing is not new. Busing has been going on in this country for years. Black children have been bused right past neighborhood schools that everybody's talking about right now in the southern part of this country. But nobody said anything about it.
And, there was a little girl in California who was part of the second class to integrate her public schools. And she was bused to school every day. And that little girl was me. So I will tell you that on this subject, it cannot be an intellectual debate among Democrats. We have to take it seriously. We have to act swiftly. That you were wrong to oppose busing in America. Then,
no,
do you agree?
I did not oppose busing in America. What I opposed is busing ordered by the Department of Education. That's what I opposed.
Well, there was a failure of states to integrate public schools in America. I was part of the second class to integrate Berkeley, California public schools almost 2 decades after Brown v. Board of Education.
Because your city council made that decision. It was a local
that's
decision.
Where the federal government must step in. That's why we have the Voting Rights Act and the Civil Rights Act. That's why we need to pass the Equality Act. That's why we need to pass the ERA, because there are moments in history where states fail to preserve the civil rights of all people. I have
supported the ERA.
We are here 50 years after Shirley Chisholm announced she was running for president, and here you are making a historic announcement. What does it mean to you to be at this conference and to have the support of Black women as you make this run for president?
I mean, it is extraordinary when you think of the power and the courage of Shirley Chisholm 50 years ago to do what she did. She knew who she was. She reminds me of one of the many sayings my mother had, which one of them is, don't you let anybody tell you who you are, you tell them who you are. That was Shirley Chisholm, unbossed, and I stand, as so many of us do, on her shoulders.
Would Hubert Humphrey have chosen Shirley Chisholm to be his nominee for vice presidency if he would have won that candidacy? We'll never know, but it was a good possibility if he did. And if he'd been able to run against Nixon, most likely that all would have been flipped around and Nixon wouldn't have got his second term.
Now symbolizes a new era in American political history. Americans all over are demanding a new sensibility, a new philosophy of government from Washington. Our will can create a new America in 1972, one where there is freedom from violence and war, at home and abroad, where there is freedom from poverty and discrimination, where there exists at least the feeling that we are making progress in ensuring for everyone medical care, employment, and decent housing. Those of you who can now vote for the first time, those of you who agree with me that the institutions of this country belong to all of the people who inhabit it, those of you who have been neglected, left out, ignored, forgotten, or shunned aside for whatever reason, give me your help at this hour. Join me in an effort to reshape our society and
gain control of our destiny as we go down the Chisholm Trail for 1972.
So then you look at all the stuff that's going on right now with the push to get Amy Coney Barrett in office, which is funny that right now the trials are going on, right? Like the trials are going on in October, which October is what? Considered the season of the witch. On one side of the aisle, some people are going to look at her as a witch. On the other side of the aisle, people are going to, praise her. It's just like Kamala Harris on one side of the aisle, the witch. Or maybe when you look at it, what is the biggest topic that's being talked about with Amy Coney Barrett? Why do most Democratic women and even Republican women who are not as staunch religious, but however identify Republican, what is one of their biggest hang-ups with Amy Coney Barrett? And that's abortion policies.
Planned Parenthood of Southeastern Pennsylvania versus Casey, Justice Scalia, as was said earlier, joined the dissent, which took the position, and I quote, "We believe that Roe was wrongly decided and that it can and should be overruled, consistent with our traditional approach to stare decisis in constitutional cases." Do you agree with Justice Scalia's view that Roe was wrongly decided? So, on something that is really a major cause with major effect on over half of the population of this country, who are women, after all, it's distressing not to get a straight answer. So let me try again. Do you agree with Justice Scalia's view that Roe was wrongly decided? Well, as a person, I don't know if you'll answer this one either. Do you agree with Justice Scalia's view that Roe can and should be overturned by the Supreme Court? Well, that makes it difficult for me, and I think for other women also on this committee, because this is a very important case, and it affects a lot of people, millions and millions of women, and you could be a very important vote. And I had hoped you would say, as a person, you've got a lovely family, you understand all the implications of family life, you should be very proud of that. I'm proud of you for that. But my position is a little different. You're going on the biggest court of this land with a problem out there that all women see one way or another in their life. And not all, but certainly married women do, and others too. And so the question comes, what happens? And will this justice support a law that has substantial precedent now? Would you commit yourself on whether you would or would not?
Senator, what I will commit is that I will obey all the rules of stare decisis, that if a question comes up before me about whether Casey or any other case should be overruled, that I will follow the law of stare decisis, applying it as the court has articulated it, applying all the factors, reliance, workability, being undermined by later facts and law, just all the standard factors. And I promise to do that for any issue that comes up, abortion or anything else. I'll follow the law.
Today we find it the center of a gathering storm as women and men argue the question of abortion, the right to life or the woman's right to choose. It's a highly charged issue and a political one as well. In the last 10 days, the President of the United States has rejected recommendations made by his own appointed Commission on Population Growth that urged liberalized abortion laws. And then the President injected himself into the controversy with a letter to Cardinal Cook, head of the Catholic Archdiocese of New York, supporting the Church's fight against liberal abortion laws.
But the fight continues across the country. Both sides press their propaganda war with rallies and marches, slogans and posters. The laws on abortion vary from state to state. 3 states, Washington, Alaska, and Hawaii, have abortion laws somewhat similar to New York's, but with residency requirements. 13 states have laws permitting legal abortion in certain circumstances. All the rest prohibit abortion except to save the life of the pregnant woman. Each demonstration, each parade, be it in Atlanta or New York City or wherever, attracts opposing pickets. The result, a melange of slogans and statements.
Heated debate on abortion is taking place throughout the country. You can hear it in churches, women's clubs, on college campuses and state legislatures. One lawmaker brought a fetus in a bottle to the New York debate.
There should be no man, no priest or politician, no doctor or any hospital administrator, no government official or husband who should have the right to force any woman to have a child against her will. I think that the time is here now that we as women must fight the established restrictions that exist on a woman's right to control her own reproductive processes, and that this is a right that no state should be allowed to abridge.
I don't feel it's ever been proven that the child, that the fetus within the womb is not human. I've heard a lot of arguments, and I still haven't heard that it is not human.
The decisive battles over the question of abortion are taking place in the legislatures and in the courts, where the old and the new laws written in the legislatures are being challenged. The Supreme Court has been asked to rule specifically whether laws restricting abortion in Texas and Georgia are a violation of the right to privacy and a denial of individual rights guaranteed by the Constitution. If the Supreme Court decides the Texas and Georgia laws on abortion are unconstitutional, that would open the way to legalized abortion throughout the country. But if the Supreme Court decides that a woman's constitutional rights are not breached by anti-abortion laws, well, then it seems likely the opposing forces will continue to do battle for many Mother's Days to come.
As well, I've talked about the oath that you will take if you're confirmed and sworn in as an Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. What's in that oath? What's it say?
Well, that oath requires a judge, I've taken the oath as a judge, to do equal justice to all, without fear or favor, regardless of wealth. To fairly apply the law is what it boils down to not give preferential treatment or express bias, in plain terms.
It says you'll administer the law in an impartial manner without regard to your personal feelings, doesn't it?
Yes, it does, Senator.
It says you will support and defend the Constitution, doesn't it? Pretty serious oath, isn't it?
It is.
Are you going to take that oath and affirm it if you're confirmed?
Yes.
You're not lying.
I'm not lying. I took that oath before I began as a judge on the 7th Circuit, and I have not violated that oath, and I would take it again, and oaths are serious to me.
Well, now, Senator Harris just called you a liar. She said that if you take that oath, you'll be lying. That you've already made up your mind how you're going to vote on some cases, particularly dealing with abortion and the Affordable Care Act. Let's just cut to the chase. She said you're a liar. Are you a liar?
I am not a liar, Senator Kennedy.
All right, I want you to tell me again, look me in the eye here in front of God and country. If you take that oath, will you mean it?
I will mean it. If I take that oath, I will mean it.
You swear to God?
I swear to God. And I have sworn at the 7th Circuit. And I meant it there, too.
You'll never break that oath?
I will not break that oath.
No matter what your personal feelings are?
No matter what my personal feelings.
No matter what your religion is?
No matter what my religion is.
So when Senator Harris and her colleagues say you're a liar, they're wrong.
They are.
So like I said, you look at Amy Colbert, you look at what's going on, which is also funny, like when you listen to her name, Barrett, right? So the whole thing is like, if she gets into office, in which she's going to, even her name, Barrett, it's like telling women, you're going to lose your freedom of choice, so just grin and bear it. I mean, it's just, like I said, you're in a program. And in 1972 and 2020 are connected. One thing is the death or is a mirror reflection of what's going on in 2020. Here's the thing what people need to understand about her going into office and why it's so important that she's being pushed right now. She held no political office whatsoever until Donald Trump got in there 3 years ago. He put her in place. How did he know that there was going to be an open seat that Ginsburg was going to die and would open up the seat at a perfect time just before re-election? How would he know that? Because without Ginsburg passing away, without her dying, Colbert would not be a factor right now, and nobody would be talking about that. Nobody would be talking about this. But it's a perfect time to reflect of what was going on in the opposite in 1972. Because in 1973, abortion became legal, and in 2021, abortion will become illegal again, which leads to 1972 debates and the 2020 debates, which are also during presidencies, during Richard Nixon's presidency of re-election and during Donald Trump's re-election. How do you not see that these things are so completely connected?
January 1973. According to Guttmacher Institute, weighed in January 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that restrictive state abortion laws were unconstitutional, thereby legalizing induced abortion throughout the country.
So if you look at all the things that went on in 1972 and in 2020, to recap everything real quick, briefly, you had the ERA, the Equal Rights Amendment Act, that was going through where women were trying and desperately trying to even the playing field with men. Well, now in 2020, they definitely are the dominant factor in the United States. So it's completely the opposite of what was going on in 1972. If you look at the presidential race in 1972, there was a black woman who actually was the first woman to ever run for president, and then that was Shirley Chisholm. And now in 2020, you actually have a black woman who is going to be running as a vice president candidate. And then you also look at, in 1972 was the very last year that abortion was illegal. And then now you're looking at in 2020 where it's legal to have an abortion. However, in 72, there was a big argument and fight to make it legal. Whereas now in 2020, with Colbert going to office, it looks like we're headed for another big long fight to make it illegal once again. So I hope that you took away from this what you needed. I hope that you got some education. I hope that you learned more about these women like Shirley Chisholm, and you learned and it opened your eyes up about the ERA, and it lets you look more into that, and that you understand that there definitely is a big driving force of women in this country, and that they're not forgotten, but now they're elevated above the status of men, and that pretty much the country in 2020 is going in that route. What does all that mean for a simulation? Well, we're going to go back to 1972 all over again. We are in a simulated reality. This thing will continue to keep playing out over and over and over again. From 1972 to 2020 is a perfect changing point in history of all these things to happen. And it's just even the whole thing with the sexist of the men versus the women, which it really should not be men versus women. It literally should be men and women working together. But from 1972 to 2020, it has been a gigantic upturn of where everything has completely flipped and gone completely the opposite way of 1972, or driven from 1972 into a completely different direction in 2020. If you haven't watched any of my other videos, especially the ones that are hindsight, which are showing the 1972 and hindsight is 2020, go and watch those videos. That'll help explain more to you of why I have made this video and why this is so important for people to see. That it's just more proof that we live in a simulated world, because just like I said, the whole thing with the perfect storm of everything that happened to get Colbert into office, the whole thing with everything going on with Equal Rights Amendment, and the whole thing that's going on with, you know, everything, your media, your even in video games, all of it. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoy this video, and I'll talk to you again real soon.
Must be the season of the witch. Must be the season of the witch, yeah. Must be the season of the witch.
The release date of Oh Girl is April 1972.
And since I don't want anybody to take away anything negative to this video, so I'm going to leave you with a montage of my most favorite women. And what is today's date?
It is Saturday, October 17th, 2020. Sweetest day in the United States is on Saturday, October 17th, 2020.
So today I will be releasing this video on Sweeties Day, just so that all the women understand that I do support and love women.
Jennifer Garner was born on April 17th, 1972. Gwyneth Paltrow was born on September 27th, 1972. Sofia Vergara was born on July 10th, 1972. Jenny McCarthy was born on November 1st, 1972. Dandy Newton was born on November 6th, 1972. Alyssa Milano was born on December 19th, 1972. Carmen Electra was born on April 20th, 1972. Rebecca Romaine was born on November 6, 1972. Cameron Diaz was born on August 30th, 1972.